we're beginning to unpack this sense of the impact of John the Baptist's message on himself, the impact of John the Baptist's message, and the crowd looking for this rescue begin to ask the questions in Luke chapter 3 verses 15 to 18 of whether John was more than a prophet, but actually the long promised Messiah who was going to bring about that rescue. As we begin to unpack some of that, and we see this sense of the political nature that John the Baptist is stepping into, and how his message could so easily be a rallying call for which people could come behind to ride into that rescue, because there was something different about him compared to all the other political people who had risen up at the time. You know, things like the Maccabean revolution hadn't lasted very long because it was rooted in humanity. But here's John, anointed by God, full of the presence of God, seeing the power of God working, bringing the prophetic nature of God, and people going, are you the one that we've been waiting hundreds of years for? This brings us back full circle to remember John's calling. John was called to be the forerunner. His calling in life was to prepare the way for the Messiah. And as he begins to preach, he begins to find himself in this heady mix of power and adulation, the crowds adoring what he's saying because he's challenging the institutions of the day. You know, the religious leaders who've caused so much sort of barriers for people to get close to God. John's breaking those down and allowing people to get close. But his message comes with a sort of tendency to having political undertones, political implications. People were recognizing him, people were listening to him, and people were looking to him for the what next. John therefore finds himself in this position of power and influence. And into that position of power and influence, we have to recognize that there is a temptation. This is something of Satan's strategy, that sometimes when people have success, Satan doesn't actually oppose success. He actually seeks to use success to undermine that. We only have to again look back through recent history to see how many Christian heroes of the faith have fallen. How many Christian heroes of the faith, you know, we look at some modern day revivals where we see thousands of people coming to salvation. We see the power of God at work, healing, delivering people, bringing people into newness of life, transforming societies. And then you read the sad story of how someone's fallen, they've been tempted by sin, they've been found to be committing adultery or fiddling the books, and consequently we see people who have this successful ministry so often undermined. Pride comes before a fall, and John the Baptist, we see a success story in what we read about him. So many of the heroes of the faith that we read about in the Bible were flawed characters. For all their success, you know, the likes of David, you know, a man after God's own heart, but flawed when it came to the ladies and how he disciplined his own sons. You know, you see Noah who gets drunk. We see Elijah who suffers from depression and breakdown. So many of the heroes are flawed characters that John the Baptist stands out as someone who succeeded. And in that, I think there are lessons for us. There's nothing wrong with success, but sometimes Satan wants to use that success to undermine us. How did John respond to that public status? And what can we learn from that to help us to find security in our own identity and avoid the pitfalls?